All right. Welcome back to Trust Your Gut. I'm Erin Trent Johnson, and I am here with Dr. A. Antonio Aragona, Doctor of Ayurvedic Medicine, my doctor of Ayurvedic medicine. And we are here. This is April. This is our April 2025 episode. And we are excited to enter into this spring season. If you are in the northern hemisphere, into Taurus season, and we are in the transition into early spring or into spring, we're fully in it now. And we're excited to come back to have our conversations about how we connect with the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda and the wisdom traditions that support us in trusting ourselves and guiding ourselves to optimum health and well living. So, Dr. A, we're going to kick it off as we normally do and come in ritual with our shloka. So, I welcome you back.
Thank you for having me back, and great to share this amazing infinite wisdom that's timeless from the Ayurvedic medical tradition. It's timeless, but it's been for thousands of years. And um, yeah, we'll go into the shloka, and then we can kind of like grow from this point of reference where we're going on our journey today together.
Mhm.
um, so in this shloka, it's basically talking about ojas, which is this important constituent to health and vitality. It has a synonym known as bala, which is like energy, vitality, strength. It's an inherent like strength in the world. And so bala and ojas indicate and imply each other. And so add, I'll share the shloka. So, um, Riddhi tishtati yachudham raktamishad satpiktakam ojaha sharire sankyatam thanasana vinyashyati. So the clear and slightly red yellowish substance situated in the heart is known as ojas. Its destruction leads to death. And um, the next part of the shloka is pratamam jayate yojha sharire smine chariranam sapirvanam madurasam la lagjagandi prajate. Ojas is the very first substance created in the body of all living beings. Its color resembles that of ghee, tastes like honey, and smells like roasted patty. And we're like, well, what are we talking about physiologically? Because in Western medicine, we don't have this understanding. In the New Age Ayurveda sense, they try to correlate ojas to immunity, but it's much more than just immunity. It is implied that if you have good strength, good vigor, good vitality, good enthusiasm, like a really deep inherent like stability from like spine upright and higher in the world, that ojas and bala are this. And if you're really feeling good in your body, we can say like a good strong immune system would imply that there is this strength in the world that you can have this armor to protect yourself from the external factors and internal factors that are introduced to things like immunity. Like it's sort of synonymous in New Age Ayurveda, not so much in traditional Ayurveda. And so why am I talking about ojas and bala? And so like we've talked previously about hridaya and the heart, and the 10 vessels, and how the heart is like the central of intelligence for the entire being of a being, at the core of the being. It is chetana, it is manas, it is like the different tissues that converge here. It's immunity, it's just prana comes here, chi comes here. It's like a central point where everything converges from and deviates from there. And so in the classics, when we look at, and I took some notes, so when we look at, Charaka and, Bhagbat from Ashtanga Hridaya, Shushruta, which is the father of surgery in Ayurveda, it's like, well, what is ojas? Well, we know that this exists in Ayurveda because as they've written, this is what it looks like. So for it to be perceived as this kind of like honey smell, resembles ghee, has like this reddish yellow hue, like they didn't make it up. They saw it, they could see it. It's knowing how to train the eyes and the senses to see where it is physiologically. And why is this so important? Because at this place, you know, um, it gives us this momentum of how we are in the world. And there's an analogy with ojas that it says like it's as honey is collected by bees from various fruits and flowers. Similarly, ojas is collected by the inherent vital qualities of human from the various physiological processes that take place in the body. So like we think about, oh, bees are going from, flower to flower and extracting, and then converting, and then they get this refined, gorgeous substance known as, raw honey. And it's like this process of extraction, extrapolation, metabolism, assimilation from your experiences, from your your intake of food, it's like input, output kind of situation. It's like there's a conversion process, there's a metabolic process, there's a transformation process. And so how we are in the world, in spite of what's happening with the astrology, which can influence the mind and how it's thinking about things, how it's making choices around things. So these are preset, predetermined like tendencies. And so we have an increased awareness. So when we do an Ayurvedic consultation and start working an Ayurvedic protocol, you're being brought back to yourself. You're being brought back home in a way that you are not taught traditionally in conventional times, modern times. And the astrology we can say is like giving you the background blueprint to like, well, these are your tendencies, these are the things you might be prone towards, and Ayurveda will help integrate in the world, because as a science, as a Vedantic science, you have Jyotish, which is the Vedic astrology, you have
Mhm.
Ayurveda, you have yoga, you have Tantra, you have these major sciences. Um, they work really well together, but Ayurveda very specifically even says even without these other sciences, because it's this deep rooted in inherent wisdom that it has from the universal consciousness, that it won't omit the other ones, of course, just like it won't omit Western medicine, it won't omit Chinese medicine, it won't omit naturopathy, but it doesn't require the dependency on it. It can be complete in and of itself. And so that's amazing to bring forward to like, well, what are we doing here? If we have an Ayurvedic consideration of like what's happening with cause and effect, so karana karya, why am I getting sick? And it's this time of year when it's transitionary through like the Ritu Sandhis or seasonal transition, and we're going from spring to summer, summer to fall, fall to spring, all these things. It's like we look at the cause and effect correlation and we're like, what do we need to do differently? And Ojas, Bala, it gives us the strength to like endure, but it is something also to be preserved. So in the list of like, Ojas, um, when it's decreased, how to look for when ojas is decreased, right? So we'll start with the things that cause
Mhm.
decrease of ojas. Ojas decreases with anger, hunger, worry, grief, exertion, too much exercise, absence of food, or very little food. And these are also like you're going to yoga class at noon instead of actually eating lunch when you're actually hungry. Or you're just eating on the go. You're instead of having a proper meal at lunch, you're doing a power bar, you know.
Mhm.
Um, intake, of dry substances like alcohol or things that cause dryness in the system. Any kind of mind altering thing will cause dryness in the system, whether it's alcohol, shrooms, MDMA, psilocybin, any of these things, cannabis, these, you have to look at the physiological mechanisms and properties of how it's being metabolized. It's not just, oh, well, this relaxes me, I'll take some nutmeg. Yeah, but not everyone can take nutmeg because it can cause increase in heating, cause increase in acidity, which might be the cause of your insomnia and you're thinking nutmeg is good for sleep, but it's not if in your case you're having acidity. Like it's like
Mhm.
Ayurveda has this vast pharmacological understanding by far more than any other system in the world, having studied Chinese medicine, having understood the baseline of like naturopathy and homeopathy. Ayurveda brings it to such a place that it almost makes you feel like, what the hell is going on here? And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, it's just too much. It's not real. It's not substantiated, but it is because it's been around for almost 10,000 years, if not longer. Right. So, ingestion of mixture or good or bad foods. Something as simple as like, oh, I have some leftovers from yesterday, but I'll make a fresh salad today to complement it. No, you have old food plus new food. It becomes a Vrudha ahar, which is incompatible food. or my tea is so hot I can't drink it right now, so I'll add some cold water or ice cube to it. Nope, you create a Virudahar, incompatible food, right?
That's my comment. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bhaya, which is like fear, um, Pajagra, which is like loss of sleep, Abhyata, which is injury, Abhishanja, which is like assault by evil spirits or microorganisms like bacteria or viruses,
Mhm.
tissue depletion of the heart, tissue depletion of the body, overexertion can do this. Um, excessive, bloodletting, releasing too much blood or releasing too much semen or wasting too much urine, and like if you have diarrhea, if you're peeing a lot, if you're
Mhm.
sweating too much, visha, poisons or like poisonous substances like tobacco, cannabis, opium, coffee, these kind of things, right? It also decreases by hot, pungent, spicy, too much, hot, spicy foods, or too much cleansing. People that are always cleansing or cleansing in inappropriate seasons. It's like, oh, I know
Mm.
people that are like fasting or doing detoxes in the middle of winter. You cannot do this, unless you're really extremely overweight with cardiovascular disease that your allergies are kicking in by December, January. Then in that very specific case, yes. If you're just like, well, I do a seasonal cleanse because it resets my system in the middle of winter, you should not be doing that because you'll
Wait,
create a
you have to
bigger.
pause. You have to pause here. I'm going to say why. You have to pause because uh there are a whole lot of Black Christians who do a Daniel fast.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, maybe there's Christians, other people, I don't know. I don't know if it's Christians, I don't know if it's Baptists. I just know that the Daniel fast that typically happens with Lent,
yeah, yeah,
right? Has a whole lot of folks showing up vegan and doing cleanses.
yeah. And the pause with this is that, like this is just a general preface, right? I haven't counted for like when people are honoring certain spiritual practices that,
Yeah.
that require like you should do a cleanse or you should do like a fasting. This is this is slightly different. And also in that case, if they're seeing an Ayurvedic physician, the physician might say it's contraindicated in your health to do this.
And this is the point I want to bring. This is what I the pause was partially for humor, but also to bring in, you know, what I think is a spiritual and cultural awareness, right? Yes, there can be a ritual and tradition, spiritual practice that is involved, but in many cases, I think you can have groups, whether it's with a church that plays a big communal gathering role that is signaling to the community that we're making a commitment to health. And so that is a bit different, right? From we are engaged in this larger spiritual tradition. It may be that we're looking at the window of time of the Lenten season,
Mhm,
right? But ultimately, you could have, I think, probably many different groups from various communities that are speaking to a broad blanket commitment to health
mhm,
for an entire community, right? Which I think is you're talking about how to make these choices and decisions that there are very specific needs that our individual bodies have.
mhm.
And so that's what I kind of wanted to just break down
Yeah.
that there are collective and communal practices that could signal, hey, we are interested in the community's health and may be counterindicated with the individual's needs.
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to slow down as we, bring that back in here for folks who
Yeah.
practice communal health.
Yeah, and the thing with these kind of practices too, we have to think about what is the origin. So traditionally, it might be like a twofold effect of what was starting with the intention of one, you know, all the major traditions of the world, whether they're questionable or not, is irrelevant. The tradition is still the tradition, whether it's from Africa, whether it's from Middle East, whether it's from, South America, like, whatever. Like at the origin of the tradition of what formed, at that level of time and consciousness, there was more of a relationship to the universal cosmic forces and planetary things and seasonal things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so to the degree that that tradition has maintained the integrity of that, knowing that there is something that happens around the solstice or something that happens around Easter time,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the second effect of that is people are understood to lose their way. And so you have the herder that's gathering the flock, and this is a way to bring people back to center point,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we understand that this is essential. And I'll even add in a third point of perspective from Ayurveda that it is very clearly stated in all the samhitas, all the traditional texts of Ayurveda, that sometimes for some diseases, especially of the mind,
Mm-hmm.
um, the lack of practice of ritual with aligning with nature will incur negative consequences.
Yes.
Even just in what I mentioned before with um, what decreases ojas, which is assault by evil spirits, microorganisms, and bacteria and viruses. If we really expound upon that, like, what does that mean? It's not just like, oh, I walked in and there was like a demonic force that penetrated.
Mm-hmm.
That can be the case, but it's like if my system, if my immunity, if my armor, if my, like shielding drops, then I am subject to things in the atmosphere, whether it's an increased level of like electromagnetic currents from the power lines outside to the increased rays of the sun as it's growing inside. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
all of this is true. Like these are the things. It's not just, like it's spiritual. And so
Yes.
when you are assaulted by these things, it's because something dropped in your system. But when you're maintaining a certain level of like one pointedness to God consciousness or divine consciousness or goddess consciousness or spiritual consciousness, then these other things cannot penetrate,
Yes. Yes.
right? And so when we come to like, these spiritual practices that these traditions offer around cleansing protocols and fasting and things like that, from the Judaic system to the Muslim system, or Christianity with Lent and giving up things, there are other reasons why that exists. And I sometimes see on Facebook the conspiratorial perspective of like this indoctrination of crazy, and I'm like, no, like I'm watching people like condemn the Pope, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if anyone that's proclaiming to be spiritual and in this pedestal, condemning another person makes them less spiritual.
That's right.
Like by default,
That's right.
Pope has his faults. Everyone has their faults, but
Yes.
he touched millions of people. But that's a different tangent to go on. So we think about people
Mm-hmm.
condemning certain traditions because of the extremism of all traditions, to
Yes.
some degree. But when you get to filter using mind, using
Mm-hmm.
a clear mind through meditation, through aligning with nature, through like all these practices, then you can see past the noise and go like, oh, people did things around Lent, people did things around Passover, people did things around Ramadan, because there's a deeper connection to the cosmic forces of the planets and the stars and all these things. Something's happening, and on a soul level, we know that. On a mental level, we're you know, too chaotic to think, right? So preachers and priests and rabbis, and they're like, all right, people, you come for guidance. We have to do this Lent, so we don't eat Friday night, and we fast on Saturday, and we break at dawn and break at dusk. And these are all things that were inherent by a deeper level of consciousness. It's been around for thousands of years that we lose track of. So these are the best things that we have available today in a really busy world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we do cleansing protocols, it's like, what are we really doing? Because in Ayurveda, we're not just cleansing the physical body so that it's more optimized. We're also cleansing the mind.
Yes.
And usually the first few days of any protocol, it's going to challenge the mind because you're letting go of things that you're attached to. Lent is an example. They just say like, give
Mm-hmm.
up the one thing you're attached to. Okay, cool. And Ayurveda, we're like, 90% of the things you're attached to for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 days, you have to give up, but
That.
but
I mean, can I just pause there?
yeah, yeah,
Can I come in with the regular people?
yeah.
You know, I distinctly remember when I had COVID the first time. And I'm going to give an example of when I had COVID the first time and when I had it the second time, because I think this is really relevant. The first time I had COVID, this is when I first started working with you, actually. And I don't think we had our official first actual appointment. I think I had my intake session with you.
Mhm.
And then 2 weeks later, I have COVID. And that was in 2022. And then as I was recovering, as I was coming out of the infectious stage, um, most people are like, okay, you come out of quarantine, you go back to your life, you go back to doing
Mhm.
exactly what you were doing. And because you had me on a pretty strict dietary protocol, like life protocol while I was on COVID, while I was in the infectious stage in
Mhm.
quarantine, I was like, cool. When I get out of this room, I'm gonna eat this, I'm gonna do that. Right?
Yeah.
I've been eating chicken soup for 2 weeks and taking these herbs,
Mhm.
and I'm going to get back to my routine. And I came back to you and I said, so when can I start eating shrimp again? And you were like, I'll let you know. And then you said, and then you recommended, and then you said yoga nidra for 40 days, right, in order to reset my sleep process.
Mhm.
I was on an herb regimen protocol, and that continued, which also um, very much ritualizes your eating process, because
Mhm.
there is so much consciousness that goes into how I prepare my food, how I prepare to eat and digest my food, how I prepare for the after experience of my food. I'm taking herbs before, I'm taking
Mhm.
herbs afterwards, I'm taking them at a specific time. I take them where I'm not diluting them with liquids. I remember I kept waking up in the middle of the night. I was like, my sleep is so disrupted. And you were like, you're drinking too much, drinking less
Mhm.
tea, right? Uh, I was not drinking any alcohol. And you were like, we're not bringing that back. Like
Mhm.
we're not bringing back the cannabis. We're not bringing that, right? Now, the week before I got COVID was Christmas. So I was having all the things, the cookies and the this and the that. Um, and so I know there were many crimes against wisdom that were committed. I mean, I will mix leftovers. Like I love
Mhm.
leftovers. So I can't wait to make something fresh to go to doctor up my leftovers.
Mhm.
None of this. Um, and so that 40-day period, which actually ended up extending to I want to say beyond a 90-day period, because I did develop some long COVID symptoms, and so we continued that regimen. But I remember just struggling with, I needed, and you know me, I need to know why. If you're going to cut all of this stuff out of, I can't have
Mhm.
seafood, I can't have this oil, I can't have sweet potatoes. Why can't
Mhm.
I have sweet potato? What's wrong with sweet potatoes? No one
Mhm.
has ever said anything bad about sweet potatoes. And yams, like,
Yeah.
and you were very clear after I probably bugged you several times. Like, can you just tell me why? Can you just tell me when? When can
Yeah.
I have this back?
Yeah.
To understand the texture and the constitution and how it was counterindicated. There's nothing wrong with sweet potatoes, and
Mhm.
also too heavy for your system
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
this time. This if I could just imagine if someone set this up and wrote me a diet that said this is what I was going to do, I absolutely would have been like, nope,
Mhm.
not going to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't, and I think that the understanding for me is always helpful. But I also am hard headed. I have to learn things the hard way.
Mhm.
And I think experiencing long COVID symptoms very much gave me the incentive to be very strict and follow this protocol.
Mhm.
But I know I was kicking, and I want to do it my way, all the way with that number, as you said, 80 restricted things. There were so many things that were restricted.
Mhm.
And my family's like, well, when can you have salmon? It's salmon. Like
Mhm.
it's salmon. What's
Yeah.
wrong with salmon? I'm like, I think something about the oils. I can't.
Mhm.
And so I say all that to say, while I probably went kicking and screaming through that level of restriction, when it came to the time for my purge, in this was in the fall, my seasonal purge in the fall of 23, I very much approached the purge with deep spiritual intention.
Mhm.
And very much entered into that process. I was actually getting ready to travel, to do a
Mhm.
presentation, to host an event. I knew that my nervous system was going to be flooded with all kinds of just lots of information coming my way because I would be presenting in front of a large group, which I'm very used to doing, but I'm also used to kind of dissociating to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I knew that that level of presence that I would have in this practice, in the purge process, that I wanted to be able to really create a container of support in maintaining that presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a great deal of writing. I did a great deal of prayer. I did a great deal of meditation, and really carried that with me. I wore all white. I was going to events where I was going to wear all white, but I was very clear that I wanted to be able to um, create a positive, energetic boundary
Mm-hmm.
around me in this process of release of the toxins that were in my body through my gut, but also in the release of toxins in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
that I would let that go as I moved forward. And in fact, I went to this event, I spoke, it was great, definitely came back with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so the experience I had, I think, prepared me. I immediately went into my protocols. I had no kicking and screaming. This.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what to do. I knew how to be intentional with that care, and I rebounded. I think within 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
if I recall, like when that cycle of COVID was over, it was over.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a dramatically different experience than the year-long experience that I had the year prior. So there's something that is very much that has been very clear for me coming out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that makes absolute sense. And so the thing with all of that is that, if the senses go awry and they're just being drawn towards the things that they're attracted to by, natural physics, a natural law of attraction kind of thing, um, then it's the opposite that creates the equilibrium to that
Mhm.
disequilibrium. So I started this list, and I'll repeat the list of like
Mhm.
what decreases ojas, which is, you know, anger, hunger, worry, grief, exertion, too much exercise, absence of food, very little food, intake of dry substances and or like alcohol, ingestion of mixture or good and bad foods, and loss of sleep and fear and injuries and assault by evil spirits and microorganisms, depletion of tissues, letting out too much blood loss, or letting out too much semen, or too much, urinating and defecating and sweating and poisons, you know, too much purification, cleansing, too much, having exposure to too much hot, spicy foods, right? So if that's the general list that says what decreases ojas, the easy answer is everything that's opposite of this.
Mhm.
And that's what it says. It actually says, since
Mhm.
these are all the things that decrease ojas, what increases ojas is everything opposite of this. So, then we say, well, what is that? Well, not having anger, not having hunger, not having worry or grief or exertion. So then we say, well, of course, these are emotions and experiences that are natural, but you work within the range of these things to know like how you're processing. And so
Yeah.
bridging it to like when you're doing cleanse protocols properly, like panchakarma, you're resetting the entire being from mental, spiritual, and physical. So it gives you a certain level of ojas and bala, so you know to make better choices moving forward from there. And you're able to identify quicker when you start going off the scale, how to get back on the scale, right? And so you
Mhm.
start to go like, oh, I'm starting to have more anxiety than usual. Oh, okay, let me slow down, let me metabolize properly. Oh, I'm feeling a little more anger than usual. This is a doshic involvement. This is a mental configuration that I need to like. You increase a certain level of awareness and consciousness. So when you're doing cleanse protocols, it resets you because it disentangles you from the things that created that need to do to cleanse that put you there to begin with. And even in Ayurveda says if you're unhealthy, then panchakarma and these particular type of protocols in Ayurveda get you back to health. And if you are in health, it is highly even more emphasized to do proper cleansing at the right times of the year, because you maintain this fortitude of bala and ojas. You maintain this mental fortitude of strength and disciplinary capacity to know, yeah, I'm going to take my kids to college orientations and travel a lot. One of my patients just came back and he was like, "Oh, I came off the regimen because I was taking my kid all over the place within like a short period of time and deviated from the diet, and symptoms started coming back, and because he was indulging in the foods that his kid wanted to eat, that was junky food and quick to go foods." And I'm like, now you develop the mental fortitude to go, well, my kid can eat that stuff. It's not ideal, but if they need it, that's fine. But I know I can't. And then there's
Hmm.
no question about like, yeah, I'm not going to eat that Reese's peanut butter cup.
Yep.
I don't need to. Versus like,
Yeah.
well, it happens to be there, so I'll just eat it. Like this is the unconscious. This is the rajas.
Yes.
This is the
Yes.
tamas. And so you develop the strength because when you're doing cleansing protocols, you're developing this discipline. And cleansing is a discipline, because it's like if you're especially in Ayurveda, it's like it becomes like it can seem painful because you're letting go of the things that you do normally every day. But if you think about and outweigh what outweighs what,
Hmm.
I'm going to suffer from not having my chai and not having a brownie and not having a thing because I'm doing this cleanse. But I'm doing this cleanse. The reason why I'm doing this cleanse is so that I can feel much better in a bigger picture.
Yes.
And then maybe I need less of these other things and I feel better from that sacrifice. Right. It's like when
Yeah.
you're investing in the market, you have to put up money first, which might be like, huh, but you're like, I'm doing that because then I know I'm going to get threefold what I'm putting into it. And you're more focused on like, if you're the person that focuses on, I have to get $5,000 only to get 15, 20, 30, 40 later, and you focus on, but I'm letting go of the five first, then you're going to be in despair. But if you're like, I gotta chalk it up and just trust that I will get that 10 times in like 6 months or in a year, right? It's like, oh, I have to give up these things so that I can like do my hot water every day and then have these particular like procedures done with cleansing protocols in Ayurveda, just so that in a month or two I will feel like, wow, I feel strong while everyone else is getting sick around me. I either got nothing, got it minimally, or I got it and didn't last very long. I'd rather that means more, because then I can live life more happily, and your friend's coughing next to you and you're like, no, I'm having my margarita, but you can't because you're sick.
I think this is, I'm feeling this connection. I'm going to take it to Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it to
He fasted. He went into the desert for 40 days to meditate. And so,
this.
so did Moses. And this 40-day thing is not just an arbitrary number.
No, it's not. That's what, thank you. Thank you. Who else went away, right, for 40 days?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking
Buddha, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad.
Muhammad, this.
Yes. And in Ayurveda, 40 days is the general understanding for when tissue, because yeah, we have what's called Saptadhatu, which is like the seven main tissues. And it takes there's some perspective of like it takes up to 40 days for each tissue to like regenerate properly and cleanse properly and reprogram properly. It takes 40 days. It's basically 3 to 5 days per tissue, which brings you to 40 days. So when a person's doing a cleanse and they're like, well, I'm doing it for 5 days. You're just doing level one. You want to go through 7 levels, you have to go through 40 days.
Mhm.
Ayurvedic protocol basically ends up being 40 days if you're really doing it more properly, if not longer.
Mhm.
But you're thinking, why is this happening? It's a physiological thing. And also spiritual practices, 40 days of sadhana, 40 days of, this and 40 days of Lent. And it's like there's something that was an inherent knowledge. It's never just coincidental.
Yes, that it is never coincidental. What emerges for me, as you mentioned, the sacrifice, right? Sacrifice that to make sacred. And you're speaking to the discipline. I'm thinking of discipline, same root word as disciple, what it means to be in a sacred practice that has the repetitions over a specific period of time, enough time that the cellular transitions, the cellular change can take place.
Hmm.
that the habit, right? I think people are like, oh, you need 21 days to make. I mean, like that's catchy for a book, right? But and
Hmm.
I definitely I live by a 21-day process. But I
Hmm.
think that, for us to get to the root, to go back to um uh what these wisdom traditions have known, um is that there is not a fast, speedy,
No.
uh pathway to transformation. Um, and and so I think there's something very important here as we're talking about um, the ability to become strong and to endure,
Yeah.
right, and endure, not to exist within suffering, right, which I think when people have to make a sacrifice, a lot of what stands in the way, is a fear of suffering. Oh, I'm not going to feel good in the moment because I won't have the margarita or the
Hmm.
brownie or my chai latte, or my salmon and my sweet
Hmm.
potatoes. Used to be a go-to dinner for me with some kale. And that the discipline,
Hmm.
that is being ritualized, um, that is bringing about the conscious awareness of how we are relating to
Hmm.
our health and the cellular processes in our health as they relate to the earth and the changes in the celestial
Hmm.
bodies, right? This I feel like is something that we are reclaiming. I think for many folks, again, I believe coming out of the pandemic, um, there has been, I think, so much movement towards study, and maybe this is like a cultural trend. I need to look into the trend studies to know like what's real, but I
Hmm.
trust myself. That's the point of this podcast, that I am perceiving a pattern, and I have very strong pattern recognition,
Hmm.
that many people are seeking sacred holistic practices for health, for life leadership, because the fast casual ways of approaching health, and leadership
Hmm.
have not served us. And so wisdom and I need to have a sign that says commit no crimes against wisdom, like over my microwave.
Yeah.
Well, I have prana dies in the microwave, but also like it needs to be that wine and dine sign in the kitchen needs to be like
Yep.
commit no crimes against wisdom.
Yeah.
In here. I and so the desire to make it easy, I think can pull us out of and away from this sacred practice.
Hmm.
So I just wanting to reflect that back. I would love to hear from you. You just completed a panchakarma experience, and I actually don't know if this is the completion, because as we spoke, there's
Yeah.
a process that exists beyond, right, a
Yeah.
portion of the ceremony or of the cleanse.
Yeah.
But what would you be willing to share with us?
Yeah. So I mean, I actually did two. It was a two-part Panchakarma. So the first one was doing
And can you explain what panchakarma is for the folks
yeah.
who may
Yes.
not know?
So in just to clarify, so as I practice traditional Ayurveda versus New Age Ayurveda, New Age Ayurveda has presented Panchakarma as this sort of like spa-like experience of like it's an implied cleansing, but the way it's packaged and marketed is like a spa-like experience where you're coming for like just basic like oil massages, maybe a pouring of the oil over the forehead known as Shirodhara. And then maybe you end that week with like a special tea that might just give you like a loose stool or something like that. This is not Panchakarma. It's not, because the purpose of panchakarma, pancha means five, karma means five actions, and so there are five specific actions of panchakarma that are facilitating the expulsion of the doshas. So what that means is, like, if in Ayurveda, not if, in Ayurveda, we know that doshas are these biological humors, basically, that when they're in alignment create health, vitality, strength, immunity, ojas, bala, you know, sattva, mental clarity, all these things. And when the doshas go awry, they're the forces of death, as they are health, if they're in an equilibrium state in the individual. And panchakarma goes to expel aggressively um, any excess of the doshas that haven't been processed properly, to reinstate a certain level of integrity back to the doshas, and it resets the excess to like a normal state again by removing aggressively. There is no cleansing protocol from any system, not Chinese medicine, not homeopathy, naturopathy, that drives it home so deeply, precisely, profoundly as panchakarma. And I've studied all the other systems, so I know how these other mechanisms work. And Ayurveda is very profound in this way, because it understands the cellular matrix of things, the organs, the tissues, where doshas are, how to look for them, and when to know which karma to do, because you're not necessarily doing all five karmas, which is vamana, which is vomiting, virochana, which is like an induced purging through diarrhea, Basti, which is like a series of medicated specialized enemas, not colonics, not coffee things, and you know, Marshana, which is like this treatment for upper respiratory, ears, eyes, nose, throat, upper above clavicle area, and Rakta Mokshan, which is usually like donating blood or Siddha Vihata, or like Rakta Mokshan, otherwise with like leeches traditionally, or wet cupping or something like that. Um, these are the things that aggressively go towards the doshas and have to be done in a systemic way, precisely. Well, most people think of panchakarma as purva karma, which is like the preparatory things. And in panchakarma, you do have to come for, basically daily massages and steam therapies and stuff like that, because it helps to get the body ready to dislodge and get rid of the doshas. That's the
Mhm.
foreplay, because
Yes.
once you're in the moment when you're vomiting and it's induced through certain medicines, you're not happy in that moment. And it's not a pretty process. If your snot is dripping out of your face and you're increasing this volume of oil, it's not a pretty process, which is why panchakarma would benefit everyone, but not everyone is for it. Ayurveda is for everyone because it's a universal system, but not everyone is for it, because you have to have this certain mental capacity. So if a person comes in and they want panchakarma, but I determine mentally they can't handle it, then they are contraindicated for panchakarma. Like,
Mhm.
it's that simple, because this will create a lot more vyapats, which are complications. And so it's very specific. Some patients contact me and they're like, it's Friday afternoon, they're like, I want to do panchakarma this weekend. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, what, I want to get the oil and steam and the oil in my forehead. I'm like, that's the spa treatment. That's purva karma. That's not panchakarma, because there's purva karma, which is the prep,
Mhm.
panchakarma, which is the actual expulsion, and then there's pashat karma, which is like the aftermath of, like, you're eating rice gruel for 4 days. You're just having water. You're having just like, not, you're building up again. So this is panchakarma, not the other simple spa versions of it. And it's requiring a certain mental capacity. And it's done through like the seasonal junctions for sure. And for the ages between 12 and 60, all the karmas are indicated, possibly for each person, depending on case by case. But then after 60, some of the karmas drop off, because after 60, that person's not capable of processing what happens from these things, and these can create bigger complications. And so then the remaining are till age 80. Then after age 80, there should be no one doing cleansing at
Mhm.
age 80, because
Mhm.
that will create more, that would expedite the aging process. People doing inappropriate cleansing, like liver flushes, kidney flushes, gallbladder flushes, they're like, oh, I lost some weight. If you didn't do the intention of flushing and you just did a fast with just hot water, you would lose weight. But
Mhm.
they're like, oh, I'm going to target this particular organ. The other organs have to be ready to deal with what's happening in this organ, because it's a systemic approach. It's not like I'm just targeting the kidneys. Because if
Yes.
I'm getting the kidneys to do one thing, what's coming out of the kidneys will go back to the liver, the spleen, the pancreas, the duodenum, the small, like where are you moving it to? Unless you're moving it out properly, you're going to create problems later. And you're wondering,
Mhm.
like, I did a cleanse. I'm supposed to feel better. Well, why don't you? Right. So this is panchakarma. And so it's a serious process. There's, you can do like, so I did vomiting first, and then I had a 2 week break. And so I integrated back into some normal foods, but I knew I was doing the next step because I needed to do 2 karmas in March. And then I did a week of bastis, which were medicated enemas. And um, that really strengthened my system in a lot of ways and got rid of a lot of things. And, weight, it was just like losing weight was a byproduct. But what came in that weight loss is like the excess things of like intracellular matter that wasn't processed properly. And,
Mm.
now immunity is strong. And then, like then I was going away a week after the karmas. Um, and I was gonna be on vacation. So it's like, oh, how do I navigate that? But
Yes.
what March prepared me for April allowed me so that I can enjoy, and I had like my cheat week. Um, but once I came home, I did 4 days of just a basic soup,
Mhm.
nothing else, just to reset the system, you
Mhm.
know. And having been in Europe, the quality of the food is much higher, less things to worry about. So whatever I deviated with, um, I'm completely metabolized because you're also having good quality. Even if you're, cheating, um, I prepare so that I can cheat, but I'm not cheating now because now I'm back in my own element. And also in the US, you have a lot of contaminants in foods. And then,
Yes.
so then I can eat more of the organic foods, which is great, but definitely not mixing like the turkey burger with the cheese, you know, or one of my favorite
Mhm.
burgers is called the left coast turkey burger, which has like bacon and cheese and turkey and like avocado. And I'm like, no bacon, no cheese. And they're like, what? I'm like, give me more avocado and the
Mhm.
turkey. And that's perfect, And it's like I'm eliminating, even though it's not an organic turkey burger, like I can process more easily that versus like
Trying to
compounded with the
process that
bacon and the
cheese.
cheese,
Yes. And
which is
the yes.
automatically a viruddha of an incompatible food, And so then we think strategically, like, oh, it's suffering. I've heard like a long time ago with Ayurveda, it's so hard, it's giving up all these things and it's difficult. Then it's not for you. Like you have to have mental strength.
Mhm.
And it's also not permanent. The
That's
end
right.
goal is that you can digest these things, but
Yes.
you have to go through the sacrifice first of giving up the things that are causing the problems so that you can reset the intelligence so that the body is knowing how to like eat better. I can have my cheese. I can have my turkey burger. I can have, a margarita. It's how to do it in the picture of things versus like I'm not doing a turkey burger with cheese and a margarita.
That's that. I want to say that as of March 2025, I can have sweet potatoes again. And I think that message around being able um, to really experience the process of panchakarma allows you to bring that consciousness forward even as you come out of it. Um, well, I want to thank you. And I am preparing for my seasonal purge. I think I said that on our last call, but for folks they who don't know, I'm not going to get into the details, but I have to do it.
Mhm.
I I couldn't do it. I was all prepared. I had my rice gruel made. I so I can speak to rice gruel. And but I will have to there are because it is so specific um as to how you prepare and what is happening with your body, with the season, with the moon. I was not able to complete my purge, so I will be doing it
Mhm.
um coming up, and we'll be able to share when we come back in May.
Mhm.
I want to thank you, Dr. A. Um, Thank you for bringing this wisdom forth, and for sharing part of your experience. And we look forward to our next month's conversation. Is there anything you would like to share before we close out?
No, I mean, I would say if anyone's interested in working with me, and especially considering cleanse protocols and seeing if you're a candidate for certain things, message me now because we have until like the third week of June before we're full-fledged in summer that cleansing is contraindicated until the fall again. So if you want to really jumpstart in your health and you're willing to make the sacrifice and be a little uncomfortable to be more comfortable in your body, in your life, your spirit, your soul, your mind, then
Mhm.
contact me at stillpointayurveda.com. And I'm always taking on new patients because it's always fun and a new adventure for me.
That's right. Well, I hope you will reach out to Dr. A and you can join me. Not together, we can, but you can join me on this journey of holistic leadership, life leadership. This is my experience that I am always willing and happy to share. And it supports me in my discernment as a leader, an entrepreneur, a mother, a partner, a daughter, caregiver, a community member. So we welcome you to join us each month here, and we wish you well.
Thank you.